This is what you can do about taking control of your own health, a podcast for people interested in learning how to create bodies that are healthy, strong, fit, and disease resistant. I'm Sean McClendon. I'm a certified personal trainer, the host of this podcast. I'm also an author and health and fitness enthusiast. Thank you for joining me today. So I'm excited about getting into this episode of the podcast. But before I get into the podcast, my featured book for this episode is my book titled What You Can Do About Belly Fat. So almost everyone at some point has wondered how to get rid of belly fat. And for most people, no matter what they do, they can't seem to get rid of it. So in my book, What You Can Do About Belly Fat, you'll learn about why fat accumulates around the midsection. You'll learn the importance of paying attention to a special type of fat called visceral fat. And you will receive key exercise, eating, and lifestyle strategies to help your body target belly fat based on my personal training experience, as well as in my own personal experience, lowering my body fat to about 10%. So if you're ready to take steps to melt away belly fat and keep it away naturally, then this is your book. Buy your copy on Amazon.com. You can look in the description below this podcast and see a link that you can use to buy your copy of my book, What You Can Do About Belly Fat. All right, good stuff. So in this episode, I want to talk a bit about hibernation. Now, you probably learned about hibernating animals back when you were in grade school, like I did. You know, basically, that hibernation is just this period of time when animals will go to sleep for a long time, so to speak. And like during the winter, they go in their cozy little cave and just take a rest. Before they go in to take a rest, they gorge, eat lots and lots of food and get kind of fat, and then go sleep for a few months and then come back out. And the reason why I was curious about learning a little bit more about hibernation is because of the fact that this is a period of time when animals, like bears, you know, and different rodents and birds and whatnot, it's a time it's a time when they go and rest for an extended period of time, and they don't eat. Well, they typically don't eat. What I found out is that, you know, depending on the type of animal, sometimes they may get up every week or three to get a little bit to eat, a little bit to drink, and then just kind of go back into hibernation. But that was interesting to me because they don't sustain themselves. They don't typically really eat much of it at all during that time. And they wait to eat until after. So I was interested in seeing if we as humans can learn anything from that, if we can gain any sort of insight from that, even though we ourselves as humans are not hibernating animals. Well, we're not animals either, so I shouldn't say that, but we don't hibernate like other living beings do. Now, the first thing I will say off the top is that technically hibernation is not sleep, but it is something that is kind of like from what I've learned, an offshoot of sleep, whereas animals will go to sleep and then they'll enter hibernation, kind of like almost like it's similar to how you might enter into different stages of sleep, but it's like an offshoot of sleep. Now, so hibernation, first of all, hibernation is really an extended version of a phenomenon, a process called torpor, Torpor. And so basically they're one and the same. Just hibernation is a longer version of torpor, where basically the physiological activity of the animal decreases, like their physical processes, their body temperature goes down, their metabolic rate goes down. Now, keep in mind that your metabolic rate is the rate at which you burn energy, the rate at which you use energy. I'll say it that way. And typically, so heart rate goes down, breathing slows, just general activity goes down. And typically, torpor, whether you're talking about a shorter process that might be a few hours to like hibernation, which it can be for months. Torpor happens usually often whenever an animal needs to survive decreased food availability. A lot of times it's initiated by cooler temperature, which is a lot of times when food becomes scarce. If you're talking about an animal that eats meat, you know, other animals may, be harder to find, because of the reduced amount of vegetation. So the animals that eat plants can't find food as much, so they go into torpor to conserve energy during that time. That's why all of their processes go down, and all that kind of stuff. So this is like a process that helps animals of various kinds to survive times of decreased food availability. And so what happens is during this time, fat sustains animals who are in torpor. So again, that's whether you're talking about torpor that lasts for several hours or that lasts for several days or weeks or months. Um, Fat sustains them. So literally, like for example, the classic example of a hibernating bear, a bear will go into torpor or it'll go into hibernation. Before that time, it will eat, substantially, I think, prepare its den and whatnot. And then it will go into hibernation, during which its body will be sustained by the fat. Now, apparently, they don't lose muscle, they don't lose bone or anything like that, because the way the process works, those are maintained, they're sustained. And the stored fat is used to provide the nutrients needed to maintain life. And it's kind of like a slow burn, so to speak. Now, let's see if that's all I wanted to cover. Like I said, there are some animals that will kind of get up every 1 to 3 weeks to kind of replenish a little bit and then kind of go back into torpor. Now, we know about bears, but there are also rodents, bats, hummingbirds, other kind of birds that enter this process. Now, so let's bring that to you, the human. Do we enter torpor? No, we don't. And sleep, although it has some similarities to it, it's not the same. Because during sleep, your body processes do slow down. Your breathing rate slows down. Your heart rate slows down. Your temperature slows down as well. But it's not quite the same type of situation, apparently. And I didn't get into all the ins and outs of that because I don't want to get into the weeds of all that science. But if you're interested, be my guest and do the research. But here's the thing. So we don't enter into that state as humans. But what we share in common with animals that go into that process is that we have mechanisms, so to speak, to protect us in times of deprivation. Now, key is fat. The same way that fat sustains animals who enter into torpor, fat is also our way of protecting us in times of scarcity. Literally, and I went to this other study, and I'll put all the links to my notes in the description. But I like the way this study that I came across referred to how it kind of talked about fat and its purpose. So fat is literally like a quote energy reservoir for other organs. So literally, fat stores energy that the various other organs in your body can use to maintain themselves. And I like this quote as well. It said, in the study, in excess nutrient conditions, the adipose tissue, fat tissue, stores surplus nutrients. So in times when there are excess of nutrients consumed, the adipose tissue stores surplus nutrients in the form of neutral lipids, whereas In nutrient deficient conditions, times when there's not a lot of nutrients being consumed food, it supplies nutrients to other tissues through lipolysis. Okay, lipolysis, that means like lipo is fat and lysis means like to split. So that's just the process by which the body kind of extracts fat from fat cells in your body. So in times of excess nutrient consumption, those excess nutrients are stored in your fat tissue. For the nutrient deficient times, when during which time fat is accessed for using those nutrients. Now, I got another quote here from that study, and it said storage of extra energy obtained during food abundance is an essential physiological activity that enhances survival during food scarcity period. So your body was literally designed same way, kind of like how hibernating animals use fat during their hibernating or torpor time period. While you don't go into that, your fat serves that same purpose. It serves the purpose of sustaining your body in times of scarcity. And now, while that may not be something that happens a lot now, so to speak, there was a time when when mankind regularly experienced times of food scarcity. Hunter-gatherer. I talked about some of that kind of stuff in my last episode. But people who are hunter-gatherers, where they were not wandering, but you know what I mean? Like they would have to go every day to hunt for meat, whether they caught that or not, or forage for tubers and berries and other plant foods, leafy plant foods, and whatever. There's times of scarcity. You wouldn't necessarily always be eating like a huge meal. In particular, a meal that had, especially like meat and bread in it. I mean, you might be able to get, leafy greens and tubers and stuff here and there, but not necessarily like, a meal. You see what I'm saying? So that used to happen in the age that we live in, of supermarkets on every corner, convenience stores on every corner, fast food restaurants, DoorDash and Uber Eats and all that kind of stuff. We have had an abundance of food for ages, for many, many years. So this is not quite our case. That said, though, we have an obesity epidemic. Not only do we have, let me back up from that. We have an overweight epidemic, because you have overweight and obesity, which is like a subset of overweight. We live in a time when almost 3/4 of our whole population is dealing with being overweight. Almost 3/4, about 75% of our whole population is overweight or obese. Okay, so what that means now keep in mind also, the thing to never forget about obesity, overweight in our society is the fact that we deal with and consume so many man-made processed foods. Some people call them Franken foods, like Frankenstein's monster. Franken foods, these foods that are hyper sugared, hyper salted, that have all these derivatives in them, chemicals and things that have just profound effects on the various processes and the hormonal activity in your body, and cause you to gain weight outside of overconsumption of food. What I mean is, obesity and overweight used to be something more so associated with people who were just eating too much food. But these days, you don't have to eat too much food to be overweight or obese. You can just eat, a decent amount of our processed foods and experience the same type of thing. Okay? So, bringing that back to what I'm talking about in this podcast, couple that with, the way that the amount of times we eat during a day, which were clearly but clearly tied to the Industrial Revolution. We start eating more often, eating more bigger meals, eating throughout the day, and then recommendations that we should eat even more meals a day to stabilize our blood sugar, which is not necessarily the case. Um, all of this has caused us to be in a state of in a peculiar state of overnutrition at all times. That said, our bodies, you having fat, you are literally designed to be able to sustain your body without eating. Yet, we have been taught to feel like we have to eat all the time. We don't go into hibernation and stuff like that, but the same way that their bodies, hibernating animals, sustain themselves off of their fat tissue during that time, you are designed to sustain yourself off of your own fat tissue. That means whenever you don't have as much food or you don't have any food at all for a time, you are designed to sustain yourself off of your fat tissue. What am I getting at? This is where stuff like I'll say intermittent fasting, on a long-term basis, or even fasting. What I mean is kind of going without food for a while. I'm not talking about starvation or stuff with food disorders. So please don't get that. And if you deal with that, you need to get professional help. But you're designed to be able to go without food for a while. You're designed to not have constant nutrition. And matter of fact, it is good for you, because what happens is when you constantly are storing fat, as we usually do, because we're constantly eating, and we're constantly eating probably a little too much food, as well as eating these foods that are hyper sugared and processed, causing us to gain abnormal amounts of fat. When you're constantly in these states, gaining fat all the time, then fat becomes problematic, because it literally, the load on your body gets high. It gets too high. Like the physical load, the weight on your body gets too high for your joints to be able to stand. You have increased hormonal activity that can be bad for you. You have increased immune system activity that can be bad for you in a variety of ways. And these cause many of the lifestyle diseases that we deal with today. Okay? So again, the main thing I'm getting at is we talk about wanting to lose fat and we feel like we don't know how to do it. But we are eating too much, and we're eating foods that are shooting our fat storage through the roof. But your fat is designed to sustain you in times of less nutrition, in times of no nutrition at all. That said, think about how the animals go without food, and keep in mind that if you have excess fat, that fat is able to sustain you. But what you have to understand is you don't need to eat food all the time. You don't. Okay? Now, I'm not saying again that you need to starve yourself or anything like that. But what you do need to consider is that fat loss is not nearly as complicated as we make it out to be. It's not. Does the bear go to Barnes and Noble and buy books on weight loss all the time? No. I mean, losing weight is not even the remotest of a bear's concern anyway. But a bear doesn't look into any of that stuff. The bear just lives its life. But we've added such a layer of complexity to weight loss and weight gain and all that kind of stuff. And we eat these foods, these weird foods or whatever, and we just feel like we don't know how to lose the fat. But it's very straightforward. It's very straightforward. Don't eat as much. Don't eat throughout the day, because you don't really have to eat all day long. You don't have to. The 3 meals a day thing, it is a myth. It is. It's a construct is what it is. So everything that we've been doing for the past probably 100 years, or somewhere give or take, everything has been kind of filtered through that lens or whatever, but we kind of haven't been recognizing that that is a industrial revolution construct. So consider how big your eating window is throughout the day. that you don't need it. You don't need to eat so close to bedtime. You don't need to eat snacks and all that kind of stuff. And fasting, going occasionally without eating food at all, giving your digestive system a rest. Check with your doctor, of course. But that is something to consider. And I'll just even say, that is something that I do personally. I do fast, going day, like a day without eating, or sometimes several hours without eating, half a day. I do that regularly as it is kind of associated with like a spiritual practice for me. But that is something that I do also because I believe in needing to give our digestive systems a rest. I believe in, getting excess fat off in that manner because, I don't really have a lot of fat to lose. So that's why I don't do extended fasts. But my point more so is I do believe that having those time periods is good for the body for the sake of keeping your body fat in check, as well as in giving your digestive system a rest, giving your body a chance to rejuvenate and recover. So we'll go into fasting in more depth in a future episode. But as always, make sure you check with your doctor. Make sure you check with your physician. I'm not going to tell you, go do this now. I will say that these are things that I practice myself, and I do believe and know it's based on science that your body is designed to sustain itself. But we just are always eating. We're always eating, and we're eating these weird foods. And so therefore, we're dealing with an issue, obesity, overweight, that is easily resolvable, but we've added many layers of complication to it because of just the way our society is shaped. All right. So anyhow, the information in this podcast is based on personal research and opinion and is not meant to be a substitute for advice from a doctor or physician. So you're advised, as always, to consult your doctor or physician before making any changes to your lifestyle. Make sure that you take responsibility for your own health. You have to do that. We have all these recommendations out there, but at the end of the day, your body is yours. It's not the government's body. Your body is not the school's body. Your body is not anybody's body but yours. It's the one that God gave you, and it has actual needs. And you have to decide for yourself whether or not the recommendations that are given, whether it be in this podcast or elsewhere, if they're good for your body. Okay. The main thing is that you're the one who's responsible for your body, and your body has needs that you must meet to have optimal health and wholeness so that you can live the life that you're called to live. Make sure you get your copy of my book, What You Can Do About Belly Fat. Look below for the link to that book. Subscribe to this episode. Share this episode. If something was helpful to you, please share, and please give a comment too. Let me know what you think about, hibernation and torpor and how that relates to us with our fat and whatnot, and how we use that in times of scarcity. Let's see. Like this episode, like, share, subscribe. Just make sure I cover all those bases. And remember that your doctor is not responsible for your health. You are. God bless you.